So is it essentially what you've done with this book? Are the first two sections really a Trojan horse into Bitcoin? You've kind of done the thing where you don't perhaps want to scare people off with Bitcoin, because I can imagine, I know you've got two big circles. You've got a big Bitcoin circle, but you've got a big macro circle. And I know not everyone in macro buys into the Bitcoin side of things. So perhaps maybe they're going to read this book and you're going to gently introduce them to Bitcoin.
That is part of what I do, and that's what makes it different than like a flat out Bitcoin book. Is that those types of books have Bitcoin in the title usually, and people go into it thinking, okay, I want to learn more about Bitcoin. This book, I mentioned that the book will touch on Bitcoin, and it does, but really it's a book about monetary technology, which in some ways is a broader concept, and generally as new technologies come around, we get to see older technologies in a new light. And so we get to go back and look at things that we might not have seen the same way if Bitcoin had never existed. So Bitcoin is definitely a really important lens for the book. But yeah, what I'm basically trying to do is kind of ease someone into Bitcoin. And from a Bitcoiner side, I think it would help them to have a stronger kind of background in monetary history and to be able to answer some of these alternative theories or criticisms in a way that some other books haven't quite explored. And then for the non-Bitcoiner or the Bitcoin curious or someone, they might be familiar with my work, they know I like it, but they never really took the time to understand it. I do think the first 2/3 of the book helps set up. So when I finally get to Bitcoin, it should be somewhat palatable, at least for anyone that has been interested in the book so far.
Right. Well, I'll be interested to see what George Gammon thinks then. If you're listening, George, I hope you enjoy the book and you get a copy and talk to Lyn. Right. We wanted to make a show with you about this book from the second I knew you were making it, and then I spoke with Danny about it, and he said, really, to do this justification, we need to make it into 3 parts. So for anyone listening, we're gonna make 3 probably short 1-hour shows as a breakdown of the book that hopefully leads people into buying the book. And I've got a feeling this might be something I send out to my friends who I've really struggled, a lot of them, to get into Bitcoin. I was just in Argentina. It's very easy to explain Bitcoin to people there. They understand it. Here it's very difficult here in the UK because people don't have such broken money. So we're going to do it into 3 parts, the past, present, and future. So essentially the past being the emergence of money, and the present being how we've got to a place where money's become broken, and then the future and how we potentially fix it, or technologies that make money better. So we may cover some absolute basics here, Lyn, stuff we've covered before, stuff plenty of people who've listened to this show will have heard before in the past. But like I say, my goal here is to get this show out to friends and families and no-coiners who want to understand what's going on. So if some of the questions are a bit basic, excuse me, you've probably answered these a bunch of times. Okay, in the words of Robert Breedlove, what is money?
So I view it through the idea that money's a ledger, which John Pfeffer and others have said before. And I really take that pretty literally, and I dive into that full concept and explain why I think that is the best way of thinking about it. And the way I describe it is that, commodity money is like nature's ledger. It's a ledger governed by nature. Bank money is basically a ledger governed by nation states, effectively, especially in the central banking era. And then open source money like Bitcoin is money governed by the users, or the creators of it, the people that run nodes that define the rule set. And so these are all ways of kind of keeping track of who owns what in this liquid way. And a question I keep coming back to in the book is who controls the ledger? And so, for example, going back to my prior point about the credit theory of money versus the commodity theory of money, the reason I bring up money as a ledger is because that's one way to reconcile those. So the commodity theorists would say that basically money is a commodity, usually gold, but anything that, before gold in certain other technological eras, you could have other types of commodity money. And then money would arise naturally to fulfill the role because barter doesn't work at scale. Barter works in small amounts, but it's filled with frictions. And so money arises naturally to solve that. But there's kind of 2 main ways to do it. The first would basically say, so what you're trying to solve with barter is the double coincidence of wants. Basically, if I have something and I want to trade with you, Peter, we have to both have something that person wants at the right time. And so there's a lot of ways that trade can fail. And so the two ways to make that easier are, one, we can bring in the component of time, which is basically bringing in the component of credit, where I say, okay, you need something. I don't need anything right now from you, but I'll give it to you, knowing that in the future I might need something, right? So, but it only works if I know you. So that's one way to try to solve the problem of barter. And then the other one is to say, well, we don't really trust each other. What could we trade on the spot that we both always want? And so generally, you get some sort of liquid commodity that becomes the one side of most transactions, the most saleable good. And this, it could be shells, it could be copper, there's all sorts of things it could be. And as different societies of different levels of technology encounter each other, eventually humans found that gold is basically the best money by its properties. And so those are two ways in which we solve the problem of barter. And so I would say that basically money is a ledger that helps us, when possible, avoid barter and help make other transactions more efficient.
Okay, so when you say money is a ledger, and there's ledgers which are governed by nature, I remember when John Pfeffer said the same to me. He said to me, Wences told him that Bitcoin is, money is a ledger and Bitcoin is the best ledger ever created. But when I think of a ledger, I think of a record as a record I can access. How would money be a ledger if there's no central, actual kind of like spreadsheet that you can see? You understand where I'm going?
Yeah, I think that's where it becomes more of an abstract ledger. The idea of a ledger becomes a useful tool to help us understand what we're doing with it. And so there's the literal ledger, which I mean, the modern form, for example, if you have money in a bank, all it is you have an entry on the bank's spreadsheet, basically their database. They just have a ledger, a literal ledger. You're there. And then it's funny, even the bank's cash is just an entry on the central bank's ledger. So we literally use a series of ledgers for our money. When you go back to like ancient times, like ancient Babylon and places like that, they had ledgers as well. Some of the earliest known writings were these literal ledgers, just basically saying who owes what for what things in the past. The reason I think we can think of physical commodities as a type of ledger is to basically say that ledger exists and we just don't have full access to it. So basically, it's a ledger that's updated by physical possession. So when you for example, use shell beads as money, they've been fairly popular among hunter-gatherer societies for their properties. No one knows exactly how many shells beads there are in the region. They don't know exactly all the full parameters of the ledger, but they can have like an idea of it. Like if anyone ever played like real-time strategy games like StarCraft, when you start out the game, you don't really see any of the map, and as you learn about it more, you see more of the map, and you rarely ever see the full map, but you kind of get a part of it. And I would say it's kind of like that, where you're updating the ledger that exists, that no one person knows the whole thing, and nature's administrating it. Nature's the one that dictates how hard that type of money is to make. So shell beads are very hard for hunter-gatherers to make, but they're not very hard for people that have experienced the Industrial Revolution to make. Whereas something like a gold coin is hard for anybody to make. And so these are these different ledgers with different properties. And the challenge comes when cultures collide and one culture knows how to kind of dilute the other culture's ledger, and they know they can do it. And it takes time for the other culture to figure it out because they have this problem where they don't see the full ledger. So I use ledger both in the literal sense and as the abstract sense, because basically what it means is we've agreed on this game to use these units as money. And it's really what we're doing is we're agreeing on an administrator. We're either going to the same bank or the same central bank and saying, okay, this is our ledger, either because we have to or because we have no better option, or we're agreeing that gold coins or silver coins or something else is our money. And it's again because there's no other better option in that environment. So it's really just about having this kind of liquid accounting system that we both choose to operate based on the properties that we think are workable.
Right. I can almost guarantee if some of my friends are listening to this right now, they're going to be like, what do you want about ledgers? What do you mean about a nature's ledger? What do you want about beads? I think to set the stage to understand is what we're trying to do here is build up the evolution of money. Where it started from, how we got to the point where we have the money now, where it's broken. And so can you talk to that kind of evolution of money, where it started, the different monies that were tried and why they failed, and how we ended up getting to the point where we have the money we have now? which, by the way, might take you 10, 15 minutes to explain, but that's what I want people to understand.
Yeah, so within our industry, Nick Szabo wrote a pretty foundational essay called Shelling Out, something like nearly 2 decades ago. And then also there are a number of books like the Bitcoin Standard that I think cover this quite well, which is basically going back to some of the early history and seeing what type of money like arose naturally, and then what killed it over time. And so, for example, you'd have cultures where, and this was common in kind of the early cultures, is different types of beads, with shell beads being the most common, but it also could be teeth and other types of materials, where money has certain properties. Like, for example, a store of value alone is not sufficient. If you have a house or a tent or some sort of like large item, it does have value to you, but it's hard to exchange with others. It's not liquid, it's not divisible, it's not durable, it's not portable. It's got a number of things that are missing from it. And so basically monies arise because they're better at those properties. They're these small units, they're divisible, they're ideally they're recombinable. So if you have a bunch of small units, you can put it back into a bigger unit. Um, when you trade with someone else, there's not a lot of difference between units. So for example, if I want to sell my house, I have to find a buyer that wants this specific house, which is different than its neighbor houses and even more different from houses 5 miles away. They have to want this, specific size, this specific quality, this age of a house, all these kind of unique properties. Whereas a gold coin is pretty similar to any other gold coin, at least of a similar size. And so basically you have this situation where monies arise, and it's usually in those early days a commodity. And shell beads are a type of commodity in a way, or they could be a more elemental commodity. And so as different cultures ran into each other, you'd have some cultures using shell beads, other ones using cocoa. You'd have other ones using salt, other ones using furs. And basically, those were all these kind of monies that serve the role good enough to make barter easier to do, especially when combined with the idea of social credit. So when social credit exists within a smaller group, they didn't necessarily have to exchange these items with every transaction. It's only when they wanted to either settle after, they might have done multiple kind of credit-based transactions and then they want to settle with themselves, or when different groups that don't know each other well come across each other and they want to trade without knowing each other. So the combination of both delayed settlement, so the idea of credit, and the idea of these commodities would arise. And so humanity on all these different continents went through all these different iterations. And both my book and others kind of goes through and catalogs some of the examples that arise. And like I said, they range from shell beads to cocoa, even feathers. But a general convergence that occurred is that as people went through the Industrial Revolution, they could make almost all these types of things way more readily. They could go and use mechanized processes to make like 10 times as many shells. They could go and collect all the furs and the feathers. And so they could basically devalue the money that these people were using. But the two commodities that were very, very hard to devalue, even with modern technology, are things like silver and gold and really the full stack of precious metals, because they're far rarer. They have a natural inbuilt difficulty adjustment. So we've already, the ancient people already got a lot of the easy surface deposits of gold. And so as our technology's gotten better, we've gotten better at making gold or producing gold. But also gold itself is getting inherently harder to produce because all the easy deposits are already gone. And so even during the 1970s, when the price went up tenfold, our production rate did not, on a percentage basis, materially increase because it's just fundamentally very hard to make more gold. And so if you kind of catalog the history of human interactions and civilizations running into each other, basically you'd have a shell culture and a silver culture collide, and the culture with silver as money has enough technology to devalue the shells of the other culture, but the shell culture can't make more silver, and so naturally silver ends up dominating between these two. And as all the different groups came together, it came down to silver and gold being the commodities that were workable enough into the modern era to survive all types of debasement. Because when we talk about commodities as a ledger, what we're really asking is a couple questions. One is who can determine changes to the ledger, right? So if we're using physical money as a ledger, it's updated by physical possession. If we're using some third-party ledger like a temple administrator in Babylon, or a modern bank today, we're relying on them to update the ledger for us. Or we're also asking the question, who can dilute the units of the ledger? So who can say, there's not enough units in this region, so we've now added more, right? And so in the era of commodity monies, you had to actually physically make more. Whereas in the era of modern ledgers, you can just decide there's more. But going back to that prior time, if a money is not sufficiently hard, like if we have a shared delusion and we pick the wrong type of money, a third party like Danny could come along and realize that we're both using a wrong type of money that he knows how to make more of, and he can dilute us. So it's kind of like this big iterative thing where humans spend thousands of years trying to, anytime some commodity gets a monetary premium, everybody would try to make more of it until they find the money that they really can't make almost any more of, at least very quickly.
A bit like shitcoins and Bitcoin then.
Kind of, yeah. Kind of like how if you look at the tens of thousands of cryptos out there, very few of them ever make a higher high against Bitcoin in the next cycle. It's always some new round of coins. They get a big pump and then they fall, and they just as a general policy, they just keep devaluing against Bitcoin. And if you look at most commodities relative to say gold, most things end up getting devalued in that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think the shitcoins essentially tell the history of money, where exactly what you said, where if there is an opportunity for somebody to dilute it and to enrich themselves, they will. And we've had scammers for thousands and thousands of years.